Chapter 7. The types of incidents found on the theta line are somewhat different than the auditor has been accustomed to running in present life processing. The elements contained in those incidents are the same: thought, emotion, effort, counter-thought, counter-emotion, counter-effort, attention units, and counter-units. The emphasis, however, is upon attention units and counter-units. The reason for this is rather obvious. How would you go about nearly killing an almost immortal being? It would require about the heaviest force possible. The tone scale, above 2, contains perception. Below 2, there is little or no perception beyond attention units. Here is the occluded case. The individual himself may be running on a higher harmonic of his occluded tone, but the incidents which must be run to restore his perception in incidents are all too heavy to contain much in the way of perception. Hence the tracking of attention units and the skills necessary to that are the requisites in running theta track incidents. Further, so heavy are these facsimiles that even when using mock-ups, one must be very conversant with Technique 80, for the incidents hang up when the motivator is run too long or when the overt or DED are run too long. Old-time incidents were said to go into recession. This is because they had an overt motivator opposite from them which had to be run. The auditor never really understands apathy, fear, or anger until he has run the heavy facsimiles of the theta line. It's not that they affect the preclear more strongly. They do not. It is that they are so heavy they can be like so much glue or hardwood. Reversing to the opposite incident, to the overt from the motivator to the overt alone makes it possible to run the theta line. One might have known for a very long time how far back this theta line went and how serious were the incidents upon it. But it would have done him no good to know about these incidents, for without attention unit running, which I developed only a short time ago, the incidents would not be runnable at all. There were two ways of running a case. One was to unburden it until the natural resurgence of the individual keyed out the lower, heavier incidents. The other was to run the incidents no matter how heavy they were. The theta line then could not be audited at all until attention unit running and overt acts had been developed and refined for auditor application. The first method of unburdening is the one which auditors have been doing wholly, whether they realized it or not. The other one of cleaning up the incidents themselves, the very bottom basics of the chains, has not been in use because it couldn't be. Thus Dianetics was kept to one life until such time as the entire mechanical aspect of the lower track could be examined and techniques developed for resolving it. Of course, these techniques, if they resolve heavy incidents, resolve lighter ones as well, and so a revolution in processing can be announced, which, if you must process only the current life, will resolve it in most cases in 5 or 10 hours of processing. If it doesn't resolve, then the auditor simply doesn't know 8 to 8008, and that's all there is to it. Despite the fact that they're heavy, that they are strange theta line incidents are easy to audit if the auditor knows 8 to 8008. If the incidents are very hard to run, then the auditor doesn't know 8 to 8008. There is just one warning about theta line incidents. You are auditing the theta body, not the messed body. It is theoretically possible to run an incident out of the theta being which is too much for the messed body. A messed body which has a weak heart had better be audited in this lifetime only until his heart condition entirely vanishes. Some of the theta line incidents kick back so hard against the mess body that the pre-clear is sure he will not live through them. If the auditor doesn't balance the overt act against the motivator in 80, If he runs one side too strongly and heavily and really drives in the somatic, he may be embarrassed by making a theta clear before his time, the body still lying about, but not breathing. The incidents themselves contain some things the auditor should know about. One doesn't have to be a nuclear physicist to understand these incidents, but the incidents are actually in the realm of nuclear physics. The auditor must only know the following. 1. Strong electrical currents produce in the vicinity of their flow what are called magnetic fields. If you wrap an electrical wire around a bar of iron and run current through the wire, you have a magnet. When you put a new piece of iron near this magnet, the field of the magnet snaps the piece of iron up against the magnet. 2. In the vicinity of any strong current, a wide force field exists. If this is intensified by using great quantities of current, the force field may extend for hundreds of feet or even miles. A radio station is a sort of force field in that it reaches hundreds or thousands of miles out from it. It takes a radio set to pick up or contact this field strongly enough to get a good reaction out of it, but actually, this instant thousands of stations throughout the world are sending force fields through your body. They are too minute to be measured or detected without receiving sets, but they are force fields just the same. Wave impulses generated from a central point and extending far out from that point. If a station could generate 1 billion times the normal current a station uses, you would be able to contact that field physically. It would be so strong. 3. It is possible for a wave to act as a retractor. That is to say, it is possible for certain waves to pull back instead of push out. You turn a hose on somebody, this pushes him back. There can exist a wave which, if it were a hose, would pull you up to the nozzle instead of pushing you away. Thetans can put out such a retractor wave. 4. It is possible to rig up 2 or 3 or 1 standing poles which are then activated with a current which will apply a very strong field to anyone in their vicinity. It is then possible to vary these fields to get various patterns of fields, or to shift from one field to another to get various angles of attack on an object. A thetan sitting amongst such a field pattern can be very thoroughly battered and rendered unconscious. It's also possible to rig up a post which would have a retractor wave coming out of it and which would pull a thetan into the post and pin him there. 5. A field is not always visible. Black band waves are the destructive waves. These are not visible and they light up nothing. It may occur to the auditor that some of these incidents, as he hears them being run, are very reminiscent of the material which is commonly found among the insane in sanatoria. These people are quite given to chattering about fields and secret waves and telepathy and things being after them with electronic devices. The past ignorance consisted of treating anything an insane person had to say as non-factual data. Today may even say that one is insane to give thought to any circumstances as occur on the theta line. An experienced auditor knows that to make the insane sane, it is necessary to run the incidents the insane person is dramatizing. In a brilliant flash of insight someday, those in charge of sanatoria may see that the reason the insane chatter about electronics is that electronics are peculiarly adapted to tailor-making insanity, and that electronics have been used for unthinkably long times to handle and control beings. Electronics alone can make a truly slave society. Those in charge of sanatoria, in view of the fact that their own figures show that electrical shocks do no good and have no beneficial effect upon patients, may someday wonder why they themselves are so violently psychotic on the subject of insisting that the insane be given electronics. Ah, you have it. Those in charge are doing a crude and ineffective dramatization of theta line incidents. Electronics make slaves. If some of these electricity-obsessed but electrically ignorant chaps who so gently shepherd our insane really want results, I can show them not just how to make a patient tractable, I can show them how to give him total amnesia so that he can then be taught like a child and may become useful in a few months. You can really wipe people out with electronics. Electric shock is so stupid and so childish that one wonders. So heavy is the concentration on electronics in the theta line, so closely connected with energy behavior is the anatomy of a theta being that only one trained in nuclear physics could have cracked this riddle. And with the data on this theta line, human treatment and the treatment of any life passes entirely into the hands of the electronics experts and out of the hands of the meddlers with minds whose training in electronics ends with knowing how to turn on an electric light and who have yet at this writing the only legislative passport into the craniums of the ill. The era has just begun. Using theta line data accumulated from pre-clears about electronics, wavelengths, practices and social customs, a handful of electronics experts could bring entire nations into their command with very little work. And those trained in yesterday would be completely powerless to stop or even detect that pervasion of command. This is regrettable, perhaps. Maybe all societies will go this way. The atom bomb is a toy compared to a device which would turn into soulless slaves an entire city, an entire nation, an entire world. But instead of hiding this information, one should bring it to light, for if it goes underground, only then can it completely have its sway. One does not look for such an enslavement to occur, for you are reading the pages in the technologies which can and will defeat it. Thus, in running your pre-clear, keep in mind that he has been, in the past, part of societies which had electronics down to a very fine point, which could control the very breathing of their subjects. Recall that he may have been part of a town, for instance, in which any revolutionary, lazy, or non-survival thought, if thought, would bring him without will to the steps of the local police station. Remember, in processing your pre-clear, that for thousands of years he has played the game of enslaving and being enslaved, and the depths of control were such, the acts in that control were such as to outsoar any mere imaginings from modern literature. Modern science fiction, even that, is a weak piker compared to the data of the past, from which these writers of the future took their plots. A public couldn't stomach what really went on before Earth. Your pre-clear isn't able to stomach it. That's why he's forgotten it. What does it take to aberrate a thetan? Thousands and thousands of volts, thousands of amperes poured into destructive wavelengths and thrown straight in his face. What does it take to get him into a position where he can be aberrated? Trickery, treachery, lies. Running electronics incidents is not difficult, not if you know 80, but there is a datum which must be repeated here even though it belongs in how to audit. The definition in Dianetics of invalidation. Invalidation is any thought, emotion or effort, or counter-thought, counter-emotion or counter-effort which denies or smothers the thought, emotion or effort of the individual. By this definition, a man is invalidated by being struck by anything. If he is run into by a car, he is invalidated. Any accident invalidates him. Any force which he cannot conquer or oppose invalidates him. Turn to the chart in your handbook for pre-clears. Here you say, on the chart of attitudes, I know, I am, faith, etc. The more the force of an individual is cancelled out by counter-forces, the lower he drifts on this chart. Hit by strong forces, he conceives that he isn't. Faith at the top of the chart turns to disbelief at the bottom. Turn a pre-clear loose into a heavy theta line incident, and what reaction do you get? You get bottom chart reactions. That is to say, the force is such in the incident that he is utterly unable to combat it. Thus he conceives himself utterly invalidated. In such a wise he comes to express in the incident bottom scale attitudes. He can't believe it. he isn't there, etc., etc. Run any theta line incident with its heavy impacts and your pre-clear will immediately start to discredit it. Keep him at it. Wave aside all his lacks of belief and other comments, and soon the tone band will rise a notch or two. Keep the tone rising using overts and motivators, and you eventually get perception and concepts. Why do you think these theta line incidents got lost? Why can't a man who has undergone a between lives battering recall that he lived before? Invalidation by force is the answer. The chart of attitudes will give you your guide. There is another thing you should know about these incidents and the emotional state of the pre-clear. He has become, in his own eyes, so degraded by force invalidation that he has devoted himself to this vegetable thing, the mist body, as the last-ditch effort to control some part of the environment. He is invalidated to nothing, so the body has to be something. And there is something else, a scale you should have of invalidation. Criticism and counter-criticism are the overt and motivator invalidations on the thought level. Misemotionalism and counter-misemotionalism are the overt and motor invalidations on the emotion level. Physical force and counter-physical force are the overt and motor invalidations on the effort level. In current or recent lives, thought, emotion, and effort hang up on the early theta line incidents. If you can't get a theta line incident of the electronics type to unburden, run criticism and counter-criticism in the current life. In general, you will find the pre-clear has been subjected, as a theta being, to enormous invalidation of all his force, power, and natural attributes. The rise in tone potential in running the theta line is such that you can expect the pre-clear to go from low to high on the E-meter after only one or two heavy electronics incidents have been run. But make sure they are theta line and that they happen to the theta who is the pre-clear before you. The intent of other beings was to make this pre-clear into willing or unwilling, but at least obedient slave, or to get him out of the area and keep him running away thereafter, or to nail him into complete useless immobility. They wanted him to have good reaction to police threats, and most psychotics go psychotic immediately after a police interview, no matter how innocent it was. They wanted him to leave messed bodies alone and respect them. On his part, your pre-clear was part and parcel of many societies, took his role in efforts to conquer Thetans after he had been conquered. He wanted messed bodies to be respected now that he had one. He wanted his slaves to be obedient. He wanted beings he didn't like to start running and keep on running, or, barring that, to be immobile, messed thereafter. Your pre-clear has been guilty himself of any crime or action he protests occurred to him. For by his worry he confesses that whether or not it happened to him, he did it to others. Your pre-clear was basically good, happy, ethical, and aesthetic before the contagion of the messed universe got him. Then, still a Thetan, he wasn't very good, but he was still trusting and ethical. Finally, when he had a body, well, look around.